remember vividly, like it was yesterday, when I was a sophomore in high school. One day I came home and I entered my parents' room and I found my mom throwing up in the toilet while two of my aunts were helping her. As a teenager who was already very overwhelmed by stress from basketball and also from school, it was something that I hated to see. And for the next few days I don't remember clearly, but maybe a few weeks, my mom would lay in her bed, and though we had several doctors visit, there were no clear reasons or clear, the medical term over her condition. And with no improvement in her sight, all of a sudden, I became scared. And as a young boy at the age of 15 or 16, I couldn't help but wonder about this terrifying what if scenario, right? What if I lose my mom? What if something happened to her? Back at school, there was a large group of students, about 20 to 30 of my high school buddies. They gather voluntarily on Friday afternoon for Bible study and also a little bit of worship in nearby church. And at that time, I was not a follower of Christ, so I would rarely go there. But the only reason I would go is because of my friends or the snacks that they provide. But I'm not sure how I ended up there on that day, but I was there. And surprisingly, rather than just instead of usual Bible study that they did, they had a time of intercessory prayer. And we were all sitting in a circle, and one by one started sharing personal prayer requests. And one by one, I knew my time was coming. And when it came to my turn to share the prayer request, I couldn't say a word, but I broke down crying. I didn't know how to pray or what to pray because, prayer was a little far from my personal life. Since I didn't have any idea what intercessory prayer was like, I just desperately sought for any kind of help. And how many of you have ever been desperate for healing? Maybe it was your body, it was your heart, it was your mind, it was your emotion, or it was your faith. Maybe it wasn't even about you. Maybe it was someone that you love or someone you once loved. You pray for God to move. You believe that He could move, but He didn't move the way you thought He would. And you trusted God. You were doing everything right. You tried every sort of thing that you could ever possibly do, and yet you were still disappointed, still broken, and still hurting. And you left wondering, God, where are you? Where were you when I needed you? Do you even care about me? Do you know what's going on in my life? And that's what Israel felt in Exodus chapter 15, which is today's passage. They had just been set free from Egypt, and they just walked through the dry ground in the Red Sea. And Moses sang a victory song, and people were praising, going nuts, and they were finally free from Egyptian slavery. But what happens next? Watch what happens next. They go from victory to disappointment, from dancing to desperation. In verse 22 of today's passage says, then Moses met Israel set out from the Red Sea, and they went into the wilderness of Shur. They went 3 days in the wilderness and found no water. No water for 3 days. I kind of understand where they are, especially after I ran a 10K run yesterday. I know what thirst feels like. Even though it was only 10K, we had a few water stations on the race day. It was only 6.3 miles. Every step made me more desperate for hydration. And when I finally grabbed that little paper cup, spilling all over, obviously, not drinking, but putting it all over my face, the cold water was the sweetest thing that I tasted that day. Now, Imagine walking for 3 days, 3 full days in the desert with no water. And you finally see from the distance, you see a spring, maybe it was a lake or a little pond, and you just run to it, you kneel down and take a sip, and then you start gagging because it was so bitter. Not just bad tasting, it was undrinkable. And what a cruel joke to a thirsty soul. So when Israel grumbled, I understand why they complained. I understand why they were pissed off. I would be there too, complaining with Israelites. And now here is a question that we all need to wrestle with today. What do you do when your story of victory turns into a season of bitterness? What would you do when your story of victory, story of goodness, story of is happily ever after, all of a sudden turns into season of bitterness? Because it happens to all of us. And if you live a long life, long enough, you'll walk through your own marrow in your life. And that brings us to today's big idea. The healing isn't just something God does, it is who He is. Healing is not just something that God does or performs, but it is who He is. Can we read it all together with our voices? Healing is not just something God does, but healing is who He is. And I'm gonna mention this phrase multiple times in today's message, and I hope you would engrave this into your heart as you listen to my message. With that being said, we're gonna go through 4 truths we can learn from today's passage in Exodus chapter 15. First point that I wanna share with you is this: healing often begins in the desert. Healing often begins in the desert. Some of God's greatest work begins in the driest place. Some of God's mighty work starts from your desert. You see, God led Israel into the wilderness, not the devil, not their bad choices or bad luck, God Himself. And you might wonder why. Why would such a loving God, why would such a God who cares and compassionate God do such thing? Because healing doesn't start with remedy, it starts with the reality that we need God. I'm not sure what kind of message you heard, but this is really important. Healing doesn't start with remedy, it starts with the reality that we need God. Verse 24, it says, then the people complained and turned against Moses. What are we going to drink? They demanded. But other Bible versions say they complained. They were furious, and they were just demanding Moses, like, what are we gonna do? Why did you take us out that we are standing in front of the bitter water that we can't even drink? And let's be real, this is where some of us are right now. We're standing in front of the bitter water. One day you thought your marriage would be sweet, but it was bitter. You thought the job that you finally got was a blessing, but it feels like a burden. God, why haven't you healed me? Why did they leave? Why do I still struggle with depression and anxiety? Why do I feel numb when I pray? And I want to tell you today, you are not alone. You are not alone. God hears your cry even when it sounds like a complaint. When it sounds like complaining and demanding, God still hears your prayer. And He's not mad about it, but He's moved. He's moved. Point number 2, healing comes through obedience, not just faith. Healing comes through obedience, not just faith. Now watch what Moses does in verse 25. So Moses cried out to the Lord for help, and the Lord showed him a piece of wood. Some Bible version says tree, some Bible version says log, but I love this version where it says a piece of wood. Moses threw it into the water, and this made the water good to drink. It was there at Marah that the Lord set before them the following decree as a standard to test their faithfulness to him. Moses cried out, and God answered. But it wasn't with a healing potion or magic trick, just with a piece of wood. And let me pause here, because this is not just an ancient Near Eastern symbolism. This is a shadow of something way greater. Can you imagine when God showed him a piece of wood or like a branch, what Moses would have thought? Like, God, are you serious right now? I got thousands of people complaining to me about fresh water and you're showing me a branch, right? What's it going to do? But nowhere in the Bible, Moses complained about this action. He picks up the wooden piece, throws it into the water, and expects God to do his work. And this broken piece of tree, a branch, unfancy piece of junk that people ignored and people passed by, placed in the middle of the bitterness through the obedience of one man, it transforms everything. A simple act of obedience turned bitter into sweet. And it says God was testing Israel how faithful they were to him. You see, sometimes we're waiting for God to perform a miracle, but God is waiting for us to obey a simple step. Maybe he's telling you today, you gotta forgive that person. Maybe he's telling you, open up to your spouse, or stop hiding the pain, bring it into light. Your healing may be on the other side of obedience. The water was bitter, but when obedience hit the bitterness, healing began. Point number 3 that I wanna share with you is this: God's promise is not just healing, but his presence. God's promise is not just healing, but his presence. Now, here's a part that we don't want to miss. In verse 26, God says, if you will diligently listen to the voice of the Lord your God and do that which is right in his eyes, I will put none of the disease on you that I put on Egyptian, for I am the Lord your healer. I am the Lord your healer. And this is the very first time God reveals himself. In original text, it says Jehovah Rapha. I am the Lord, your healer. I like this translation better than I am the Lord who heals you. Rather than that translation, I love this. I am the Lord, your healer, because it feels more personal, more direct about who God is. This is Yahweh, the Lord, saying, I am not just the one who rescues you, I'm the one who makes you whole. That's the gospel. That's the message of cross. Gospel is not about just erasing our sin, but giving us something greater, giving us the access to God's holy presence. Jesus, the righteous branch, enters into our bitter Mara moments and bitter life and brings healing as a whole. You see, Jesus doesn't want to just get you out of the bondage. He wants to get the bondage out of you. Remember this. Why? Because Jesus doesn't just do healing. Healing is who he is. And here's something that might surprise you. I'm not sure if you know by the name Charles Spurgeon, massively influential preacher, beloved by generation. He's like the GOAT of the preachers. And he battled with anxiety and depression all his life. But he didn't hide it. He didn't pretend it wasn't there. His struggles are written in his book to his students called The Lectures to My Students. And yet he kept trusting. He kept preaching. He kept obeying. And he says something that I think about a lot. He says this: I have learned to kiss the wave that throws me against the rock of ages. And this confession, this declaration can come from someone who found healing, not in the absence of pain, but in the presence of Christ. And like Spurgeon, like Israelites, you and me, some of you have been walking through a desert, walking through a wilderness filled with bitterness, filled with agony, filled with hopelessness, filled with betrayal and disappointment. And we've been praying for a solution. We've been praying for freedom. We've been praying for removal of troubles. And many times we think healing is just removal of pain, but the real healing God brings is much deeper than that. He wants us to experience His presence because He is the healer Himself. He wants to heal your trust. He wants to heal your heart. He wants to heal your soul. He wants to heal your joy. He wants to heal your identity, and He wants to heal your story. The last point that I want to share with you is this: God's healing leads to abundance. God's healing leads to abundance. Let's look at how chapter ends in verse 27. Verse 27, in New International Version, it says, "Then they came to Elim, where there were 12 springs and 70 palm trees, and they camped there near the water." God didn't leave them at Marah, the place of bitterness. He led them to Elim, a place of abundance, a place of rest, a place of refreshment. 12 springs, 70 palm trees. Why? Because God doesn't just heal you to survive, God heals you to flourish and enjoy. Listen to me, church. Bitterness cannot heal itself. Your trauma won't solve itself. Your wounds won't close without the cross, but Jesus steps in. He redeems, He restores. He's a Jehovah Rapha, God who heals your pain, your misery, and your disappointment. So always come out to Him. Cry out to Him. Because God's not offended by your pain. He enters your pain. He enters your season of bitterness. He enters your life. He's not far away from you. He's not offended by your sufferings or your struggles, your complaints about whatever is going through in your life. He rather enters your pain. He enters your season of bitterness. He enters your situation, and He wants you to experience Him as a whole. You may be in Marah right now. You may be walking through the season of bitterness. But remember, the Elim is coming. Elim is waiting for you. So I studied ancient documents on how far the Elim was from Marah. And Elim was about not even a day-long walk for them. So it was right there. It was very close. It was very near. So don't give up in the bitterness, because Elim is waiting for you. Healing is in the works. Restoration is on the way. He is Jehovah Rapha, and His promise never fails. Let me invite the praise team as we close today's message. Let me finish the story that I shared earlier. So when it was my turn to share the prayer request, and I broke down and I didn't know what to say, how to share the prayer request. And I just shared about what I was going through, the condition of my mom, and shared my situation to my friends and my fear and my doubts, my worries. And as I shared it, you know what was so funny? None of them gave me advice. None of them even said, don't worry about it. Don't be afraid. None of them said anything like that. None of them even said God would heal her. God would do a miracle. None of them said any sort of these messages. They simply gathered around me, got on their knees, and prayed like it was their own mother. And at that time, in that circle, for the very first time in my life, now, as I shared, I wasn't even a Christian. I went to church, I heard about the Bible stories, but I've never experienced God in my personal life. But in there, as I was getting prayers from my beloved brothers and sisters, for the very first time in my life, I felt warmth, I felt love. And that was good enough because my trembling heart found peace. And after that prayer gathering, I thanked everyone because I was bawling so much. My eyes were like, it was ugly. I was ugly. And I came home. And I wasn't expecting anything because, I was not used to this Christian sort of miracles or healing or whatever. So I just went home. I wasn't expecting anything because it was my first time being prayed over. Healing, miracle, I don't know so much about those kind of stuff. But when I walked in, I passed the living room and I opened my parents' room to just say hi. And my mom was sitting there in her couch watching our favorite TV show. And then the moment I should be so happy and joyful, I broke down and I started crying. You know why? Because it was not because she was better, but because I felt for the first time that God was near and God hears. To a person like me, He hears and He's near. And I wasn't alone. It was like He was saying to me, don't worry, I got you. I'm sovereign over all things. I'm the God in your desert. You see, some of you have been walking through a desert and you are bitter, you're weary, you're tired, you're hurt, you're in pain. You may be in your season of Mara right now. Everything feels bitter and sorrowful. And you came to a point of wondering if God still sees you and cares for you and loves you. And today I want to encourage all of you who are listening to this message. He does. He does. He has never left you. He has not forgotten you. He's not punishing you for your bad decision, but He's preparing you. Because healing isn't just what God does, it is who He is. And as you can see from the story, God didn't remove the water. God didn't go to a grocery store to get you a new Brita or new fresh water for you. He didn't transport them out of the desert. He revealed something in the desert. A symbol of grace, a piece of wood, and which is a foreshadow of the cross of Jesus Christ. That cross in your bitterness, now you find your true healing of your soul and your spirit. Not just a healer of your sickness, but of your past. Healer of your sin, healer of your shame, healer of your bitterness, and healer of your identity. You may not see it. You feel like, man, I don't see what's happening. I don't know if God is working in me, but Elohim is ahead of you. And even here, right here in the middle of your desert, He is still the Lord who heals, our Jehovah Rapha. He is the God who heals. He is the God who restores. He is the God who brings water out of the wood, sweetness out of bitter, purpose out of pain. Cross of Jesus Christ brings goodness in your bitterness, healing in your brokenness, and peace in your sorrow. So here is a question. Here is a question that we all need to ask ourselves today. Where in my life have I been asking for a miracle when God is calling me to His presence? And here, listen to me carefully. We're gonna pray for healing, but one of the things that hurts me the most, or that saddens me the most, one of the gifts that I've been praying over for so long, it wasn't gift of prophecy or gift of tongue or gift of this and that. It was gift of healing, because there's so many people who are struggling with sickness and illness and depression and suicidal thoughts. And I'm just like, God, if I have this gift of healing and I lay my hand and I just pray over this person, I really wish this person would be healed, but I don't have that here. I don't have that gift. It breaks my heart sometimes. But one thing that I can guarantee you, even though I cannot offer the gift of healing to your situation, your condition, one thing that I can pray over you is the presence of God. That He is there for you. He never left you. You are not alone in this journey. He is walking through the desert with you. And when you fall down, He's the one who lifts you up. He will carry you in the season of your bitterness. So don't give up. Don't give up. The Elam is coming. At this time, could we bow our heads in prayer right now? Right now, if you're in a place where you need healing, it could be your physical, your emotional, your spiritual. At this time, I just want to pray for you. And I don't have any gifts, but I know the God who heals. He's a healer Himself. And maybe it's not for you. Maybe it was someone that you love so much. And at this time, would you just put your hands on your heart right now as I pray for you, pray over you. And we're gonna continue on with our worship. And we're gonna have more time of prayer in the middle of the song. And let's really expect the healing and the miracle to be done. God, I thank you that you see each individual who put their hands on their heart, every hand, every heart. You are Jehovah Rapha. We believe that you still heal in this moment. You are the healer yourself. And even if we are in the desert, even if the water feels bitter, we know that you are working. You're working in the midst of the bitterness and suffering and struggles and pain right now. God, so give us the courage to obey, to trust you even when it is hard, even though we can't see anything, and to believe that Elam is coming. In Jesus' mighty name we pray.